Hey, what is up guys? This is Nishi from MST.TV here, back with another Market Watch episode. So continuing on with our trend from last week, we're looking at some pretty random cards today. I don't know what it is about 2024, but apparently people are looking all over the place when it comes to cardboard. For today, we're looking at cards that are just starting to trend upwards. These aren't yet the crazy, huge, expensive cards that have quadrupled in price overnight, but rather they're things that we've noticed people paying attention to from watching what decks and cards people seem to be interested in or posting online. A lot of these are going to be smaller cards that haven't started trending price-wise yet, but they're certainly still worth paying attention to. Let's get started. Alright guys, before we get started, I'd like to take a second to thank the sponsor of today's video, HelloFresh. We just arrived in 2024, and you guys know what that means: New Year's resolutions. Whether it's to lose weight, eat healthier, save money, or pick up a hobby, I know we all have goals that we'd like to achieve this year. HelloFresh is helping you to accomplish these goals as America's #1 meal kit today. They provide fresh ingredients and quality recipes that are delivered directly to your door, ready and easy to prepare, and they have a promotion going on right now as well, where you'll receive 1 free breakfast item per box as long as the subscription is active. One of my personal resolutions for this year is to eat healthier, and part of how I'm planning to do that is by making food at home more. However, between work, making content, and keeping up with the Yu-Gi-Oh market, sometimes it's hard to find time in the day to plan out meals, especially when you have to run to the grocery store to hunt for different ingredients. So for me, HelloFresh is a huge time saver. You can just choose the recipes ahead of time and select a delivery date. They'll take care and make sure that you have all the ingredients you need, so all you have to do is open your box of stuff and get straight to the cooking. It's a huge time saver, leaving you more time to get other things done. HelloFresh has more than 45 different dinner options available, including more than 30 calorie smart and protein smart recipes, so you can change things up every week and not have to worry about eating the same thing over and over again. So please guys, click the link in the description or use my code POGMSTFree and get free breakfast for life, 1 breakfast item per box while the subscription is active. Thank you again to HelloFresh for sponsoring today's video. Alright, kicking things off, we're looking at Magician Souls. So Souls is meant to be a Dark Magician support card, but the card has actually ended up just being a pretty crazy piece of support for several other decks instead. This card can be special summoned out of your hand by sending a level 6 or higher spellcaster from your deck to the graveyard, and then it lets you send 2 spells or traps from your hand or field to the graveyard in order to draw the same number of cards. I believe that when we were seeing this card early on, we were running Apprentice Illusion Magician as your dump target, and then later on players evolved to use Illusion of Chaos since it could also search for souls as well. Now, however, some players are looking at possibly using this card in certain Snake Eye variants. Diabellstar the Black Witch happens to be a level 7 spellcaster, and with it, you don't mind sending it to the graveyard with souls since Wanted can add it from deck or graveyard. At the same time, a gimmick with a bunch of the Snake Eye cards is to place monsters to the spell trap zone as continuous spell cards, so in the event that you have certain cards stuck there, or you have a bricky hand, you can use Souls to hopefully convert those cards into something more playable. Now, Souls was an especially pricey card when it first came out. It was short printed in Legendary Duelist Magical Hero and was well over $100 per copy. Eventually, the card did get a couple of reprints. It was a secret rare in Brothers of Legend, and then it also got the colored ultra rare reprints in the Legendary Duelist Season 3 box set. However, the card has never gotten a reprint that makes it widely accessible, so the card remains quite expensive. For any of the ultra rare printings, you're looking at paying around $30 per copy, while the secret rares are now up to between $35 and $40. Magician Souls has a history of getting expensive, so if it really does start to see an increase in usage, it wouldn't surprise me to see those prices starting to trend upwards again. However, given that it is an iconic card that supports the Dark Magician archetype, and given that it already has had a couple of reprints and was used to push multiple products, it might finally be time for Magician Souls to get that reprint that makes it so much more easily accessible to the rest of the player base. Next up, I want to talk about Vermillion Sparrow. This card is a level 5 Fire Pyro Fusion monster that doesn't have any effects at all. It's kind of a weird one for us to be looking at actually because the card isn't even being used right now. However, a lot of players are looking at this card because it may potentially have applications in the Snake Eye deck later this year. Vermillion Sparrow can be summoned off of Ready or Instant Fusion, both cards that cheat out extra bodies onto the field at the cost of 1,000 life points, and players are thinking that there's a chance that with all the fire support we've gotten and are going to get, maybe a Ready Fusion package with Vermillion Sparrow might come in useful later this year. The idea actually isn't too crazy. Pyro monsters are among the more under-supported types in the game, so the community sort of has to get creative when it comes to finding viable extenders that fit into certain specific type and attribute combinations. We actually just saw this with a very similar card in Soul Hunter, a ready fusion target that some Unchained players are opting to run in order to make High King Caesar more easily. Now, also similarly to Soul Hunter, Vermillion Sparrow has just one printing as a short printed common from one of the old Astral packs. The fusion monsters of these packs were quite difficult to pull. I think a lot of the time you'd only get 1 or 2 of them in every box of 100 packs, so you probably won't just find these in a random binder at your locals. This card was only a $3 card or so right up until about a week ago. However, the card has gotten a decent amount of attention from the online community, and I believe that MCole40 had some discussions about the card as well, and as a result, this card has shot up to $10 each, with very few near mint copies available on TCG Player. This card is definitely an interesting tech option, but obviously it's difficult now to justify investing in it when there's nothing that's actually using it. It would have been a pretty good pickup, I think, at $3, but really I can't justify spending money on this card when it's already at $10. Maybe pick up 1 copy if you really want to be safe, just in case it does go up, but aside from that, I would just stay away from this card for now. Alright, this is probably one of the more unexpected ones here. We're looking at TG Rocket Salamander. So I think we all know this card is one of the worst cards to pull from Age of Overlord alongside TG Limiter removal. There's nothing worse than knowing that you could have pulled a Wanted or an SP and you pull this guy instead. However, things may not be all that bad, as this card is now getting a little bit of attention over in the OCG. With this card, you contribute it to summon a TG Screw Serpent out of the deck, who can then revive a Rocket Salamander on summon. Since Screw Serpent is a tuner, this gives you access to a level 5 synchro, meaning that this card is basically a 1-card IB. On top of this, Rocket Salamander is a level 1 fire monster, which of course means you can summon it off of the original Sinful Spoils. Now over in the OCG, there's a World Chalice Snake Eye deck that players are talking about, which does look pretty interesting. I don't know if it's that strong, but it seems like an interesting combination of cards to try following the unbanning of IB, which I'm sure will catch a lot of players off guard. Rocket Salamander is of course one of the cheaper cards out of Age of Overlord. The secret rares are still only $1 each, and even though we've actually seen quite a few copies moving recently, they're not up very much price-wise. The quarter century printing has basically doubled in price though. This was down at a low of around $10, and they're right around the $20 mark now. I don't know exactly how good this deck is going to be. I just saw the list come up yesterday and a couple of people sent it to me as well. I get the sense that maybe it's a little bit bricky or gimmicky, but who knows? At only $1 each, just go ahead and pick up a set of secret salamanders just in case. Don't get too caught up in the quarter century printings unless you can get them for around $12 to $15. The quarter century printing will go up in price more if this package does start to see play, but the package could just as easily flop and not perform, and you'd be stuck sitting with a card that nobody wants. Another unexpected card out of Age of Overlord here, this one is Divine Temple of the Snake Eye. Now big shout out here to Landon Oliver, who let me know about this card a few days ago actually. So with all of the hype for Wanted and Flamber's Dragon and even Snake Eye Ash, the Snake Eye field spell remains a relatively forgotten piece. On activation, this card lets you place a Snake Eye monster from your hand, deck, or graveyard to your spell trap zone, and if your opponent summons a monster, you can special summon one of your monsters that's currently being treated as a continuous spell. This is actually a pretty useful effect when you consider that cards like Flamber's Dragon can also place monsters to the spell trap zone. Also keep in mind that in the game today, it's really common for players to summon monsters on the opponent's turn. You should be able to use the effect of this card every single turn and generate some good advantage off of it. Now so far, I haven't seen any decks using this card here in the TCG. Obviously it's extremely early on in the format, and we don't have Populous or the Promethean Princess until February. However, this card is starting to come up as a one-of over in the OCG in pure Snake Eye deck lists, which are actually one of the more relevant decks after the tier 0.5 Fire Kings. I think that realistically, following the next couple of lists, we would see Konami hit Fire Kings, but not necessarily the Snake Eye cards, especially if they're going to continue expanding on the lore over the next several core sets, and I think that that would open up the door for the field spell to see more usage. The Ultras are still quite cheap at only $1 or $2, but the quarter century printing has actually shot way up, as it was around $20 before, but is now up at $45. Just like with Rocket Salamander, I am going to recommend picking up the lower rarity printing while it is under $1, since that's probably going to be your best return percentage-wise if the card does go up, while also minimizing the amount of risk that you're taking on. Moving back a set here, we next have Red Eye's Black Meteor Dragon. This card is a super rare from Duelist Nexus that's actually pretty useful. You special summon this card from your hand by sending a level 5 or higher vanilla monster from your deck to the graveyard. Now this card being a Red Eye's monster, this card is something that you can search from your deck with Black Metal Dragon. Black Metal Dragon isn't a once per turn effect, so if you search for Red Eye's Darkness Metal Dragon for the first time, and then you revive the Black Metal Dragon with Guard Dragon Pisty, then you link off the Black Metal Dragon again, you can search for this card. The idea is that this is just a free body that you can get out onto the field. I believe that a lot of Dragon Link decks are still opting to run the Gamma and Driver package, so this can be a way to filter the Driver out of your deck as well. Dragon Link is a deck that has seen a lot of hits over the last couple of years between cards like Chaos Space, Chaos Ruler, Alpi, and the Black and White Baby Dragons. However, a lot of players believe that Dragons actually got a buff this time around with the unbanning of Ib. Sure, Ib is going to require you to run some unconventional cards in your deck, but it's a powerful card that effectively brings out 2 additional extenders, and there's a bunch of players hyping up Dragon Link once again. With Black Meteor Dragon, it isn't a huge price jump that we're seeing. This card is just a super rare from Duelist Nexus, so it's not particularly old. However, as we noted with cards like Snake Eye Ash, anytime a super from a recent core set hits more than $1 or $2, it's worth noting, since there's usually so many of them available on the market that they should be much cheaper. Red Eye's Black Meteor Dragon is starting to hit that price point, with the cheapest ones on TCG Player right now between $2 and $3 each, and a bunch of copies even having been moved at $4 according to the sold listings. You probably really only care about this card if you're on Dragon Link. I don't think any other deck is really going to be using this card at all outside of Red Eyes, but it's certainly something that's worth digging up out of your bulk hollows if you can find them, and then offloading them while you can for a few extra bucks. Alright, so this is a card that I think we talked about a couple of months ago. It's Yubel. So the reason for this card trending in the first place shouldn't be a surprise to anybody. We have Yubel support coming in Phantom Nightmare, and it's actually not that bad. A lot of the time recently when we get new support for an old card or theme, the cards are pretty bad and not really viable at all. But even though Yubel probably isn't going to be top tier, it's probably better than a lot of the other legacy support that we've seen. The surprise, however, is actually with Legacy of Destruction, the core set coming after Phantom Nightmare, because in there we have some additional Yubel support. This tells us that the Yubel support isn't just a one and done kind of thing, but rather it means we could get some more cool support in a future set again. Of course, you do have to run Yubel itself, since for a bunch of the cards you have to control a Yubel to activate their effects. I think that also for the fusion monster that lets you use your opponent's entire board as fusion material for Super Poly, you have to use a Yubel as material as well. Now, because of the new support, we're actually not seeing Yubel tank in price as expected. For the secret rares from Legendary Collection Generation X, those are actually still up at $25 to $30 as the highest rarity version of the card. For the original supers from Phantom Darkness, they're around $15 to $20, and then even for the rares from the Raw Yellow Mega Pack, they're right around $12 to $15. I know a lot of players are excited to try this archetype out, especially since you can combine it with things like the Chimera package, but aside from a copy or two for yourself to use, I wouldn't be holding on to too many copies of this. I'm definitely expecting this card to get a reprint in an upcoming reprint set shortly after Phantom Nightmare drops, maybe in an OTS tournament pack as a common or a super. It also wouldn't surprise me to see Yubel come out as a Starlight or Quarter Century printing in Phantom Nightmare, sort of like how they decided to give Starlight upgrades to Stratos in Burst of Destiny, or the Dark Magicians in Battle of Chaos. And finally, there's one last card for us to talk about today. It is Shadal Fusion. Shadal Fusion is a pretty old card that I think has a lot of potential as a utility option in the side deck. I know that right now we have Branded Fusion and Fusion Destiny, each of which allows you to conduct a fusion summon using fusion materials from the deck, but this used to not be the standard. With Shadal Fusion, you can only send the materials from your deck if your opponent controls a monster that was special summoned from the extra deck. This was really important. Before, you would have to use Hedgehog to search for Beast and tribute your construct to set Beast just to get your extra deck monster off of the field, since if your opponent had a Shadal Fusion, they would really punish you for leaving an extra deck monster on board. For now, the Shadal package seems like a situationally useful engine. Obviously, if your opponent doesn't have an extra deck monster on the field, it's probably a dead card, but if they do have one, it can be really useful. I think that the Shadal package should definitely be considered as a utility engine. For one, you get to proc the effect of the Shadal monster that you send to the graveyard. This could be Aerial to banish cards from the graveyard, Beast to draw a card, or Dragon to pop back row. However, you also get the utility of dumping a monster of any specific attribute. If I were playing a fire deck, I could use Shadal Fusion to summon Grista and dump a Shadal monster and any fire monster from my deck as well. And finally, you do also get that fusion monster that you're summoning out, who could then be used as a material for some sort of extra deck summon, at the very least ensuring that you get SP's banish effect. I don't know, for me, I think that Shadal Fusion as a side deck package would be really useful, though I do understand it can be situational and it takes up several side deck spots, as well as at least one extra deck spot. However, I do think Shadal Fusion is cheap enough right now that I would consider grabbing a few copies. The highest rarity printing is the secret rare from Shadows in Valhalla, and those are actually only a couple of dollars each. The other noteworthy printing is the original super rare from Duelist Alliance. These used to be $20 or so, but they're now only a couple of dollars per copy as well. If you're looking for a more budget option, this card was also reprinted in the Megatins back in 2015, and Shadal's also got a starter deck where this came as a super as well. I believe you should be able to pick up either version for only $1 or so. So yeah, overall, I do have Shadal Fusion as a buy, as a potentially useful side deck option that can provide a lot of utility to different decks, where the price is also at one of its lowest price points ever. Alright guys, that is all we have for today's episode. Today's episode was definitely a bit more forward-looking. I know that generally with market watches, we're looking at things that have already happened or have already changed, but today we're going down a bit of a different route. Just keep in mind that I'm going off of all of the same information that you guys have available, so see what looks good to you, try to make as informed of a decision as possible. Anyways guys, if you did enjoy today's market watch, please make sure you let me know by hitting that thumbs up button. Make sure you leave a comment in the comment section down below and subscribe if you haven't already. And until next time guys, don't forget to hold on to your MST.TV.